So I wanted to take a little bit of time. Ceci asked me to speak and talk a little bit about Circuit of the Americas and some of our experiences over the past 2 years working with them. We're coming up on our 2-year anniversary working with Circuit of the Americas, and it's been a pretty amazing journey, and I just want to share a little bit of that today. So as you might have guessed, I'm Adam. I run the Tetra Group. I'm the CEO and founder of the Tetra Group, and we make stuff. That's about the simplest way I could describe that. We do a number of different things from both on the creative and the development side. We do branding and identity work, we do design work, but we also do web applications, e-commerce websites. The list kind of goes on and on. So before I get started, I've got a confession to make. And much to the unhappiness of my wife, I guess you could say, I love motorsports. I love Formula One, World Rally. If it's on Speed Network, I'm a huge fan. I'm tuning in basically every day. That's my ESPN, that's my Spurs or basketball. It doesn't really matter, what type of racing it is when it comes to motorsports, but it's definitely a passion of mine. Beyond that, I love building stuff. And I love building stuff for the web, but even if I'm not building stuff for the web, you can find me typically after hours working out of my workshop. That's my brother there in the middle. On the left is part of my 92 Ford Ranger restoration that I'm working on. And that's a V8 engine that I'm shoehorning in there. And then on the right is a custom bobber project that I'm working on with my brother as well too. Sorry, Mom. And I like to keep busy. I like to build things, and it's definitely a passion of mine, whether it's web-based or not. Before I go any further, I've got to say that we love Circuit of the Americas, or CODA, as we often refer to them as. They're a great client, and we've gotten to do some amazing things with them over the past 2 years, and I've highlighted some of those things up on the slide. And they range from both design and development. Everything from media queries to branding, microsites, landing pages, AutoMagic server deployments. We've learned a lot, we've grown a lot in the past 2 years, and CODA has been very near and dear to our hearts over the past 2 years. Looking back, when we first met with CODA, I thought they were crazy. I basically was brought into their office, and we basically got wind that they were looking to update their existing websites and kind of bring some new features to life. And so I went to meet them at their office. They're actually on Congress, right on 3rd Street. Great, nice, office, very spacious at the time, and it was empty. And I met with Regan Hawley, who's their VP of Marketing. And other than Regan and the partners who were in the other section of the office and a girl answering phones, the office was deserted. And he brought me in and started talking about their plans and what they were going to do for the track. And I thought they were crazy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Before I go any further, I want to read at least part of a quote by Red McCombs, who's one of the investors and partners with the Circuit of the Americas project. He's not the only one, but he's a very prominent member of that. Basically, to summarize, he talks about only having 24 hours a day to be productive and do great things, with your life. And I'm very proud of CODA for what they've accomplished in terms of bringing this world recognized facility sort of to life from basically a concept. They've done something incredible that seemed like it was going to be impossible and almost seemed like it wouldn't happen. So going back to when I met with them first, I was brought into their office, and these were some of the earliest renderings that we sort of were presented when we were talking about the website and all of the features and things that they wanted to do and kind of show off. And we sort of toured the office at the time. Like I said, was very empty. And Regan walked us back sort of behind the curtain, and we sort of stepped into their war room at the time. So these renderings, among other technical diagrams and schematics and plans for the track, were plastered wall to wall. And it was incredibly humbling and I was incredibly blown away by the level of detail that basically has gone into building this facility. And if building a facility wasn't a challenge enough, they decided to seat a 30,000 seat amphitheater in the middle of the track, as if, you know, building a complex for F1 wasn't big enough. They decided to put a concert venue right in the middle of the track as well too. So needless to say, their ambitions, even from our first meeting, were outstanding. They're huge. And so it was our job to sort of meet with them and understand their expectations for the site and all of the information that we needed to kind of gather and put out there and distribute for everybody. So much like any other project would start off, we sat down with them and met with them, and these are some of the first things that we heard from them and sort of took to heart in terms of what the site needed to contain as the track progress was progressing, and they were basically wanting to get more information out there, let people know about tickets and advertisements and PSLs, and the list kind of goes on and on. So we took that to heart. We met a couple times, and one of the first steps in the process, of course, was wireframes. And so we had to sort of re-envision the site from where it currently existed and where they wanted to go with it. And one of their big pain points is they did have a current website at the time, but they wanted a content management system. They wanted a system that would allow them to put out press releases and upload photos, and you know, you've heard the story. And so that's, you know, was sort of the basis for some of our discovery and some of the process that we walked through. When we were working on the wireframes, another area that was very important to them was the slideshow area. In the main, they wanted to have a full width image that basically could have race results, news, track updates. They wanted it to be sort of high impact, high energy, and really kind of grab your attention like right up front, whatever is the latest and greatest news that they had to offer up. These were actually some of the first design iterations. I went to the boneyard and kind of pulled these out. But I am really proud that even as we sort of walked through these different designs with them, and we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary, like I said, this is very much what the site looks like today. And we have sort of kept up, and we've made some, you know, design improvements here and there. But I'm very proud of the fact that we've iterated on the original design that we launched with even 2 years ago. So once we basically came to an agreement on the way the site should look, we decided to go ahead and jump into development. This looks like many other project processes. We basically broke up the different elements and decided what, in HTML and CSS, how it should be structured, how it should function. And I still have this. This is actually a screenshot of the original HTML and CSS before we added the typekit fonts in that we implemented for them. So I'm really proud that I still have this and it's still, I still have access to it. And looking back over that code, even for it being 2 years ago, it was done in HTML5, and some of the tags could have been done a little better. But I was very proud kind of and prep for this talk to kind of go back and look over the work that had been done almost 2 years ago. And I loved what we sort of put together for them initially and what it sort of progressed into today. And then, of course, after we did the HTML and CSS, we started working on the channels with them. And I'm sorry if there are Drupal folks in the audience. It is expression engine based. It's a platform that's kind of near and dear to us. It's one that we've worked with for a while. And I won't go into too much of our platform of choice. But our first stop in the development was to build out these different channels. And these channels are still in use today, and they basically allow Coda to go in and update their articles, the breaking news, team, static pages, and press. And all of these different areas basically allow Coda, and ourselves as well too, to go in and update the sites sort of as necessary, update the site as necessary. So once all that was done, we worked for a couple months with Coda, and we had the site up on a development server. Everything was good. We basically ran it up the chain and got the approval from the higher ups, and everybody was on board, and we were ready to go. We were ready to launch this new site that we'd worked so very hard on. And before I kind of go into what happened, I think we need to do some quick math. So you can imagine a 6-figure mailing list that generated over 10,000 requests in under 5 minutes, divided by one small server, basically equals what I would call the 7 minutes of my personal hell. We didn't plan very well, and we sort of got our wires crossed when we decided to launch the site, and we and Coda underestimated how popular this new site was going to be, how popular Formula One was going to be, and we completely underestimated the response that we would get. So on the fly, this is what my 7 minutes look like, that empty valley there in my heart. We decided that obviously the server that we had them on was not going to basically handle the traffic if this traffic was to keep up. So on the fly, we decided it's a Rackspace Cloud server, and we decided to resize it and basically just up the memory on it, and that's what took the 7 minutes essentially. But you can see even after, we basically, I think, tripled it in size. I don't remember the exact number on it originally, but once we did resize it, we were down for a bit of time, but from then on out, we were able to handle the rest of the traffic and the rest of the updates for the rest of that day without a problem. So here's the good news. We learned from our mistake, and Coda, I think, was very gracious with us about this. And like I said, we underestimated how popular the tickets would be and how popular this new site would be. So since then, Coda is now on a load-balanced multi-server setup. And that setup, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the talk, varies up or down depending on what events are going on, how much traffic we're expecting. If there's going to be tickets and news announcements, we'll vary the number of servers. We'll spin those up or down and sort of adjust to the load for the server. So after we launched the site, we started talking with Coda, and they decided that they wanted to update their brand. They had an existing logo that you saw previously, which was the red and gray, sort of not really monochromatic, but definitely had some gradients and a little bit of a old feel to it. And they really wanted to upgrade that. And so we worked with them on a new logo. We worked with them to sort of clean up the typeface. We tried a number of different typefaces. We tried a number of different color schemes, kind of went back and forth, looked how that looked on the website, how that potentially could look on merchandise, and sort of all over the place. And that's the logo that essentially is being used today. And that's the logo that you see on the site now. That's the logo that's used on the building. And they really wanted something fresh and something that felt a little bit updated. So we were pretty pleased to kind of work with them on that. So this brings us about to April or May, I guess, of last year. And once we kind of updated the brand, the site was no longer crashing. We decided we had to start planning for F1. We had originally put out just some basic information. They had not, at this point, if I remember correctly, launched the general admission tickets and a number of other different things as well too. So we started talking about race day considerations. And these are just some of the things that we've built for CODA over the past year. And they range from tickets to PSL seating, and there is a big difference. Maps, directions, travel packages, breaking news, sponsorships. The list really kind of goes on and on. So we spent the better part of last year prepping for Formula One and getting the site ready for Formula One. And that was a big, big undertaking. When we launched initially, it was pretty basic, slideshow and a couple other channels as well too. And we really had to kind of hone in on some of the other requirements and necessary information that we needed to get out to people looking to get credentialed, if they were media, if they were photographers, people looking to get information and schedules if they were coming to the event. And the list sort of went on and on. And then finally, we come to November, and we've been working on the site for months, making continual updates and changes. And as one of our original discussions with them, we had talked with them about being on site for Formula One to basically support them and the website, make sure everything went smoothly, and basically be there to support them. On the left is Robert and I in the media center that they built, which is right next to the paddock, which is across from the main grandstand. It was a pretty large room, double screen displays that were up on the wall that had both live feeds of the track and statistics of the different races and events that were going on. And this, of course, was on the track. This was actually before the drivers sort of took their parade. And we were sort of helping facilitate some of the media staff as well, too, to sort of help corral the drivers and some of the other media photographers and whatnot into the designated places to do interviews. And I don't think, were necessarily ready for some of the responsibilities of the race day support. These were, I took my film camera, and these were some pretty cool stills, 35 stills that I got to take while I was there. And it was a pretty great event to be able to be there on site and to support and sort of help CODA make sure that race day went smoothly. And we were simply just a cog in the wheel too. That's one thing I kind of want to point out is, our primary responsibilities were making sure that press releases went out, photos went out, and our responsibilities sort of got lumped into working, with the website and everything that kind of went along with that. CODA did a great job of hiring some support staff for the event as well too. They had these great staff writers that we were working kind of side by side with, who were writing updates right after the events happened that we were posting to the website almost immediately after those events. We arrived on site. We were actually there for all 4 days for F1. And we found out that there were some needs and some considerations from the media staff that we had not considered before, especially dealing with a number, distributing images and press releases, things that we had sort of built to the system for, but we sort of didn't anticipate the volume of photos and press and information that really had to get out to everybody. So while we were there, we had to do some design and some dev on the fly. So it turned into less of supporting the website because it handled the website and the server performed magically. It became less of a support issue and more about actually making improvements and allowing the media to get the information out that they needed to get out. And that included, of course, last-minute announcements, maps, etc. So post F1 was an interesting change for us because like I said, the better part of last year was focusing on Formula One and the single race that happened in 2012. And that took a lot of work, and it was a huge, huge event. It was the essentially inaugural event for Circuit of the Americas, and it needed a lot of attention. But after that, we had to sort of step back and say, well, great, Formula One went well, and we're proud of the work that was sort of done, but now there are multiple events. Now there are concerts. And so we basically had to go back and not necessarily re-engineer, but we had to sort of rethink sort of the way the site worked and the way things are organized. And we're still working through some of those things now. As events are happening, we're basically building a library of events, of photos, of race results. And these were not considerations that CODA even had on their mind when we originally spoke. And so the site now has become one part sales tool and one part results and sort of a resume for CODA for the past events and some of the races that have sort of gone on. This is how the site looks now. It's very similar to, like I said, the original site that we launched. Pretty proud that we've made very few changes to it since our initial launch. And I think that's really important, especially when you're dealing with sales and when you're dealing with people who are going to be coming back to the site on a regular basis and looking for tickets and information and are curious about the events that are kind of going on with the track, to give them a completely different experience every time they're to visit the same site can be a little disjointing to some people. So I'm pretty proud that the design has relatively stayed unchanged in the past 2 years, and we're continuing to make improvements. So like I said, after the Formula One event, we basically found ourselves facing events. And these are now what the updated events pages look like. And these are actually done right now per event. That's AMLS and WEC on the left, and of course the Formula One 2013 race on the right. And this was something that we had to build for. So instead of initially working with a site that featured one race and had one set of maps and one set of prohibited items, we actually had to deal with multiple races, with multiple tickets, multiple packages, photos, results, and the list kind of goes on and on. We also updated the media center. Most of these changes were made last year when we were working with them on site in terms of the bulk uploading for photos and just kind of retooling how they distribute content, press releases, and information to interested media. There's also now event packages. This is a site that we're not directly responsible for, but we do work with them quite a bit, Quint Events. And this is a part of the CODA site, and this is a part of every event now. And CODA has begun to think more and more about just tickets for the race, and they're actually thinking about providing people with travel arrangements and trying to be more of a convenience for those people, especially for those people who are coming in from out of town, from out of the country, and it is a consideration that wasn't originally had. And CODA has done, I think, a great job of sort of trying to keep up with the demand for tickets and a request for hotels and event packages sort of along the line. So let's take a look at some numbers, because numbers are fun, right? So I basically split it up into two different types of categories, dealing with both server data and the actual events. So there are 3 website properties that we actually manage for Circuit of the Americas. Focus mostly today on circuitoftheamericas.com, but we also work and continually update the Austin 360 Amphitheater, which is, of course, is the site for the concert venue out at the track, and Austin Fan Fest, which is the annual concert that goes on the same weekend of Formula One. So these 3 websites have basically combined into an entire ecosystem of development and server deployments that, when we originally started out, was not a consideration, and it was not something that we talked about very much and didn't think we needed. We very much need it. It combined total between the 3 different sites and over basically a year and a half of development. We've got over probably 1,400, that's an estimate, Git commits. If you're not familiar with Git, Git is basically a revisioning system that allows you to track your code. And when you check your code in, you essentially add a commit. And so every little code change or update is considered a commit. Beyond that, each of the sites has their unique load balancer to handle spikes in traffic and distribute the load as necessary, essentially, between however many servers that we've got set up for them. And the server number is kind of in a 6 to 10 range. It depends on, like I said, the time of year, if we're heading into an event or not, and how much demand we really think that a event or announcement would sort of generate. And these are pretty small servers. They're not big, beefy. They're Nginx based, pretty lightweight, only a couple gigs of memory, and they're pretty lightweight servers. We've done a lot of testing in comparison with Coda in terms of load testing and how servers perform, and we really came up with a pretty nimble solution for them to sort of keep some servers in our back pocket and spin them up or down, as necessary. Beyond those, and those 6 or 10 servers are actually the web servers. Those are the ones that are serving up the content for the sites and all of that. Beyond that, we've got 3 development servers as well too, one for each of the websites. So we can privately test code, add development features, and sort of preview everything that we're working on with Circuit of the Americas. In terms of numbers, we've passed a huge amount of data sort of through the system and the CDN as well too. The photos, especially for the media center and a couple other different parts of the site, are uploaded to CDN, so they're more lightweight and they cost less to essentially send out if they're being downloaded. All of the images that are on the media center, you can click on a larger size, and sometimes those larger sizes are 2,000 by 4,000 or whatever. They're fairly large. So the majority of that is on CDN. Not everything is on a CDN. We do have some of our local, of course, images and things like that that we basically use to power the website. Most of those are local, and that's just due to how we've got the system sort of set up. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. From the event side, this is unbelievable to me as well too, just as much as the data I think is pretty crazy. We've done 4 events so far. F1 2012, V8 Supercars, MotoGP, and Grand Am. The estimated attendance is well over 400,000 people. Formula One alone had in the 300,000 range, 200-something thousand, and MotoGP had 140,000-ish as well too. There's 3 more races planned so far in 2013, of course, AMLS and WEC, and F1 2013, which I'm super excited about. Beyond that, we've added concerts. So early last year, we added the Austin 360 amphitheater site, which was a surprise to us. We knew that there was going to be a tower built out of the track, but we didn't realize that their plans were initially to turn it into, such a, huge concert venue, and basically launched that right after the Formula One race. We launched the site, the Austin 360 Amphitheater site, I believe in August or September of last year, and they've been putting on concerts throughout the year, and they've got even more planned. On the site right now, I believe there are 10 or 12 that have been announced so far, but I believe they're looking at in the upper range of 20 to, if not 25 or 30 more concerts before the year is out. This also doesn't include private track days and closed circuit testing. So if you would like to rent the track, you can certainly rent the track. There's information on the site about that. If you're willing to pay, you can do that. But a number of groups around Austin, some motorsports groups and stuff like that have rented it for some private track days. And the track has also been used a couple times for closed circuit testing, prototype testing, and things that are not necessarily open, to the public. And those are just some of the events that are going on at the COTA track right now. So I want to talk a little bit about, so this kind of brings us full circle. This is where, our work that we've been doing with them over the almost past 2 years now. I want to talk a little bit about lessons learned and sort of our takeaways of, what we've sort of worked through over the past 2 years with COTA. So first one I want to start off with, plan for the unexpected. You never know what's going to happen. We worked with COTA, like I said, extensively on the initial site deployment. We put a decent server behind it and thought this would be great. And we didn't consider the fact that when the newsletter went out, that it would notify everybody on the newsletter at one time. And of course, you saw what happened. It killed the server. Since then, we've worked with the media partners and COTA as well to sort of span out announcements and distribution of the newsletter and things like that. So the impact on the server isn't as great as it was from that initial hey announcement. So the first law of COTA is something will break when you least expect. You might add in some code and push a new feature, and we all work locally. I haven't talked too much about our sort of workflow with this, but we all work locally for each of the sites that we do for Circuit of the Americas, for all of our websites actually. And everything is pushed in through a Git commit. That Git commit is then distributed to whatever dev or production server that we're working with. And so, it will happen. You can work locally, you can test, but you'll be surprised that you put something up on the server and you've broken something else. Even if it's a content management system, a web application, the platform doesn't really matter. Things will break when you least expect. The second rule we learned, or second law of COTA, lesson learned in this little subset, is always keep a server in your back pocket. So for us, like I said, COTA is now on a load-balanced multi-server setup, and one of the lessons learned when we crashed is, not to do that again, but the second lesson was inside of that was to always keep an extra server ready to go, but spun down. So we always have one server at its lowest setting, 256 megs or whatever, and all we have to do to sort of get that up and running is resize that server, takes less than 10 minutes, and just add it into the load balancer and run a git pull on the server, and we'll update the information for us. It's much easier than starting a server from scratch, having to go through OS, MySQL install, and the list kind of goes on and on. And then the third is backup everything. We didn't always use Git with COTA. We didn't always use Git with all of our projects, but we do now. And we sort of learned our lesson with that. So if you're working with code, if you're working with a multi-dev environment, a multi-server environment, back up your code, use Git, use Mercurial if you really want to go that route. But use something to back up your code beyond just logging in and FTPing your information up, because it's so easy for somebody to fat finger something, to delete something, and then the site's gone, and you're missing something, or that new widget you just built is gone. The next kind of lesson learned is to scale with your clients. So when we first met with Coda, Coda was very small. It was basically the investors, a set of partners, and a few other office employees. And Tetra Group was simply a partnership at the time when we first met with them. And so, like I said, we were brought into their office, and it was rather empty, and they had these very big demands, and we said, yes, we'll do that for you. But then over time, their requests got to be more and more, and we got hooked in with their media center, and we got hooked in with their suite owner and their guest services coordinator, and the contacts for us over at Coda started to expand more and more, and with that, the development increased. And for a while, that was a challenge for us because we were a two-man team, and we talked with Coda about it, and that was probably early 2012, and we decided that it was more work than Rob or myself at the time could really take on. So we said, we need to hire some people. And so we've kind of continued to do that as things have sort of progressed on with them, and their requests have increased, and it's a big thing to support. And that's one thing that we've sort of taken away from working with Coda. And as you're sort of engaging some of these clients and taking on some of these projects, you should keep that in the back of your mind, is that if this product that I'm working on makes it, and it's the hottest app in like the App Store, Apple App Store or something like that, or if they get funding or support, and the project that you're working on really explodes, it's your responsibility as providing a service that you need to essentially scale with that client if you want to do that. Some people don't like to do that. For us, it was a no-brainer. We loved the interaction that we had with Coda, and we still have a great relationship with them, and we decided to basically scale up with them. As you might have guessed, the team has grown for Tetra Group. So a couple of my guys are here today. And part of that, it's not all up to Coda, but part of that is with Coda, and basically continue to support them, both on the design and branding side of things, a little bit on the advertisement side of things, but also on the development side of things. Everything from the Media Center updates to media accreditation, Suite Portal updates, some of the things I didn't even show off in the presentation that are sort of private-ish areas, those things have to be developed out. And it's your responsibility when you sort of take on these relationships with clients to support them in the long term. So another sort of relationship building aspect of working with clients is you have to be honest. You have to be honest with your clients. If you're not being honest with your clients, you're doing them a disservice. That doesn't mean you're always right, and that doesn't mean that because you bring something to their attention that they're going to like what you say or want to do with what you're suggesting. But you need to be honest with the people that you're working with. And I would say, and I would offer up that just as much as most of the people in this room are experts in what you do in terms of app development, website development, branding, design, etc., your clients that you're working with are experts in their respective fields. The people who are involved with Circuit of the Americas are some very bright, very intelligent people who have been around motorsports and sporting events for a very long time, and I respect each and every one of them and their sort of knowledge when it comes to the industry that they're in. Now, when it sort of gets lobbed over the wall and they say, "Hey, how does this look? Does this look good? We're thinking about implementing this." That's our place to basically say, "Yes, that looks good. No, that doesn't look good. I think you should do this instead." And I think it's very important, and it kind of goes to the core of having a great relationship with clients, is to be honest with them. The follow-up to that, and sort of the fourth lesson learned, is you have to be flexible too. Everybody wants a cool, awesome, responsive, sexy looking website, but that's not always right. And that's not always right for business objectives. That's not always right for sales. And you've got to be flexible. Like I said, when clients approach you and ask you to do these certain things, you have to keep in mind that they're coming to you because you're an expert, but they also are an expert in what they're doing. So if somebody says to you that we need to add this button or this text or this bit of information because it's going to help do X in terms of driving sales or driving traffic, you should listen to them. And you should work with the clients and be flexible to sort of meet their needs as those new things sort of come up. So what's next? We've done lots of development for Coda. We've done lots of design work for Coda. Lots of event updates now. We've added 2 more sites to the repertoire for them and sort of the ecosystem, but we're not done. So these are some shots from, I'm sure some people have seen before, from Mr. Brad Frost, basically talking about this is web, this will be web. And I'll say when we first started on the Coda website, that responsive web design was sort of in its infancy. I know Ethan and other people have sort of, basically released their first early books and started writing about being responsive and being fluid. But the demand for traffic and some of the things that we were seeing at the time, especially with Circuit of the Americas being somewhat of an international-based site, didn't really apply at the time. And so that's why you'll see if you go to Circuit of the Americas, it is not a responsive site. That's one of our objectives this year, to sort of update it and bring that sort of in line. But at the time, that was really not one of our priorities. Priority was to get information out there, to sell tickets, to talk to these different events. And then we sort of got the data back from the actual event, and we started to look at analytics, and we're being a little bit more thoughtful now of the people who are actually visiting the site. And we've seen mobile traffic exponentially grow over the last months and years that the site sort of has been in place. And so for us, responsive is the next stop for Circuit of the Americas. Austin Fan Fest and Austin 360 Amphitheater, those sites were more recent, and both of those are responsive. But our job now is to sort of bring Coda up to date as well too on that. So the next area that we're talking with Circuit of the Americas about right now is being more social. They have a great Pinterest page, if anybody's a Pinterest fan, that you should check out. Some really great photos, not just of Circuit of the Americas events, but some other different types of racing and areas as well too that they continually update. Some really great photos in here of the track and a number of different other things, so you should check this out. But we've been talking with Coda more, and they're really trying to take to heart the reviews and the feedback and the information that they've received from people who have attended the races and the different events and the concerts out of the track. And we're looking at ways to sort of bring that into the fold and bring that over so it's not website and social, it's all sort of an ecosystem together. So the information that they might be posting to Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter has a more cohesive blend and is more well-rounded throughout the site. So these are some other things as well too that we're talking with them about. And I basically put this up as to say, don't stop the features. Just because the website is done, it's actually not done. Everybody likes to say, oh yes, we'll be done by such and such date. That is not true in the history of any website or design ever. And if you're looking to sort of build those relationships with clients that are going to last over time, don't stop the features. start out with a minimal requirement set, things that you can get the product or the site out the door, and then iterate on that. Work on new designs. Work on, for us, for Coda, it was new events. We're working on a track rental system for people to reserve and kind of work, reserve the track days online. And same thing with user reviews and the list kind of goes on and on. But just because the site is done, it's not done. You should always sort of continue to iterate and continue to add new things so people have a reason to come back. And I think that's really important to sort of reinforce your relationships with your clients and sort of keep that relationship in place over the long term. That's it. Thanks. So I think we're going to open up the floor for a couple minutes for some QA. So if anybody's got some questions. Yes, so the question is if we're still on Rackspace. We are. We've, like I said, gotten smarter. The load balancer and multi-server setup is on Rackspace. It's on their cloud environment. So I have amazing things to say about Rackspace. They have incredible support, and they really stand by their product. We've tinkered with Amazon EC2, and we considered moving Coda over for a time, but for us, the performance to cost ratio doesn't work itself out compared to what we've got with Rackspace. We do not. And that's part of the areas we're looking at with sort of going back and doing some of the responsive design that we're working with. Excuse me. We, right now, are developing locally. And we do that for a couple reasons. And we've got the JS and CS locally for a couple reasons. We ran into some issues because they are on a multi-server load balance system, and we're using Expression Engine. Circuit of the Americas and us has one admin interface, one general location that we log into essentially to do any DB updates, and that talks directly to the DB, and that gets updated. Not a real problem there. However, we noticed that once we started working with Git and we started making revisions and we were working locally and distributing these commits to the different servers, that CSS wasn't getting updated and JavaScript wasn't getting updated. So we decided to keep it local because we're using essentially a Git script that goes to each of the servers and updates each of the servers. But beyond that, we also ran into some just oddball JS and CSS caching issues that were a little troublesome. So we would basically do a pull request and the files wouldn't get updated. So we added a couple hooks in Expression Engine, and you'll see it on like the CSS tag. We actually have like a little script that runs. It's just a little bit of code that actually forces a CSS reload every time. And it's just what kind of we worked out for this system. So there's a couple different, hopefully I won't give any trade secrets here. Tickets and reservations are sort of split up in a couple different ways for Coda. Their general admission and some of their more seating related things are actually through Ticketmaster. So we didn't have to do too much there. There are PSL licenses. If you want a PSL and you want a dedicated seat for X number of races, that actually goes through a sales process. So we didn't have to worry about too much with that. The track rental program that we're working on with them will actually be an Expression Engine extension that they're starting with. They basically have been taking track rentals and reservations over the phone and has sort of been a sales process so far. So we're going to take that data and basically populate Expression Engine. And on the front end, we're going to build basically a walkthrough that will allow people to pick their date, enter their information, and pay for their reservation sort of online. And all of that information will get stored in Expression Engine through some custom development as well too. So Ticketmaster, there are, but because it was easier for them, because they've got a couple contacts over on the Ticketmaster side and a couple people in-house that deal with the Ticketmaster pricing and information and all of that, anytime that there's tickets on sale, for the most part, we just link directly out to the Ticketmaster sites. And that was because they wanted to keep that sort of in-house to manage. Okay. So the question was page load time a consideration for the site, and basically what did we do to sort of counteract that? It's always a consideration. For us, it was trying to keep our code as small as possible. That's kind of a no-brainer with some of our projects. When we work locally, we typically, not always, but typically minify our JavaScript and CSS through CodeKit. We basically, once we save a file, CodeKit automatically minifies it and saves that up. So that saves quite a bit as well too. And of course, we try and keep things down as much as possible. That kind of covers the code side of things. On the technical side of things, one of the things I didn't list in on the numbers section, the technical side, we do have varnish caching on the server side of things. So we are caching the pages and we are trying to offer those up. So if you're loaded for the first time and then you refresh the page, we're basically sort of juggling both varnish caching on a hardware side of things and also browser caching for some of the other items as well too. So. Any other questions? Mm-hmm. So the question was, we're basically taking a static site and we're going to come back and essentially retrofit responsive web design. And this is not the only project that we've done that on. I think that there's some considerations that have to be made, especially when you cross the desktop to mobile. You have to start thinking about touch points and using jQuery mobile for slideshows and making considerations for the other devices. Beyond that, I think you have to reanalyze sort of the structure and things that are in play. And sometimes that structure and the page layouts have to be adjusted to work within a responsive format. Because if you build a static site and you work on a 960 grid or just from scratch, you're not really considering that, especially if you're going for a fixed width. This is how much the left column is, this is how much the right column is. So to go back and sort of reanalyze that and talk about how elements will fold together and sort of dance with each other definitely is in consideration. Time estimate, it depends. It depends on how much hopefully we won't bite off more than we can chew, but we also might do some other things with the design in addition to just making it responsive. Coda has talked a little bit about doing a mobile optimized site, of course, in addition to doing responsive web design that highlights directions, track info, maps, things that really get to the point of the site versus maybe on a tablet or desktop, you're maybe concerned with news and updates and PR. So I think you have to consider some of the functional elements that go into responsive design as well too. Okay. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on both internally from Coda and externally. So I have a very clean approach when it comes to design. I like things to be very, uniform and clean and pretty concise when you get down to fonts and type and stuff like that. But when we started implementing some of the F1 and WC3 and some of the other the other event pages, we got lots of feedback because we did big background images and we did textured areas and larger photos and things like that. And this, take this with a grain of salt because it might also play into the market and motorsports and some of the who the site appeals to. But we got lots of feedback, and people love it. Like, they love the high impact photos, the background images, textures, and things like that. Not just from Coda. We've heard that from customers and racegoers as well too. So we haven't done so much A/B testing, but we have sort of done some user reviews and user testing, sort of internally and a little bit externally as well too. Yeah. Any other questions? Awesome. Thanks, guys.